Okay then. All right, guys, welcome to the Good Podcast. I am your host, Rob Watson, and in today's episode, I'm speaking with Andrew and Emma from Miscellaneous Adventures. They currently live in the Lake District, where they work in the woods, make things, take photos, and enjoy adventures big and small in the surrounding mountains, lakes, and valleys with their young son, Benji. For 11 years, they lived in a small barn in the woods in Sussex, where they discovered a new way of living and developed a deeper relationship with nature that inspires all the many strands of the work they do. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation, something I'm very much interested in. I know plenty of my guests are as well. So firstly, Andrew and Emma, thank you for chatting with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So what first kind of inspired you to, live closer to nature? Was there a particular trigger point that happened where you just thought, we just wanted to live closer or just move away from the corporate world in some ways?
To be honest, I guess it was a bit of an accident, really, wasn't it? So, before we got into this sort of stuff, we were both graphic designers, which I know you are as well. But we were just looking for a nice place to have a workspace, really, weren't we?
Yes, we'd just come back from a bit of traveling, and we were living with Andrew's parents, and we were just looking for somewhere to rent, and we accidentally found a little barn in the woods that was available, and long story short, we ended up living there and didn't realize it was going to change the trajectory of our lives quite as much as it did.
Yeah. So it started, we were sort of quite naive, I suppose. So we started off as graphic designers, and then we moved into this place, and we ended up getting sort of involved with some of the work that was going on the land there, and just living closer to nature. Sort of we ended up I suppose that side of things just started to take over a little bit, really. So it was a very accidental thing. I think, like, both of us, we've always been sort of outdoorsy people, so that there's always been a sort of connection to nature, but it's, I guess, like, fairly superficial.
Well, we've been living in cities a lot, and we just thought it'd be nice to live in the countryside for a bit.
Just something different. But it turned into something a lot more than that for us. Definitely, we were really lucky to find this place that we lived. So it was in a woodland, and the people that were our landlords then, they had built this barn that we lived in, and they were really knowledgeable about the woods and about making things, and they just started to sort of impart knowledge, didn't they? Just share bits and pieces with us, and I think very quickly we realized how little we knew about nature and about the landscape, and that just sort of sent us off on a bit of a journey, really, of discovery. We just wanted to find out a lot more about it, and that's what started us off, really. Just an
accidental move.
I think at the same time we were getting into hiking and stuff a lot more, and we also went to Sweden around the same time as well. We did a hike in the north of Sweden, in Lapland, and that was like our first taste of nature, like on a wilderness scale, I suppose. And so those two things kind of combined, I think, to just they just shifted the way that we thought about nature, really, and our place in it. And and that was kind of the start of the journey, really.
Did you notice a big difference in yourselves after being in the woods, and what kind of changes did you notice?
God, I think it's changed us completely, hasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think that hike in Sweden shifted something quite fundamental in both of us that we weren't expecting to get from that experience. And then we came home with that feeling to the woods, and we realized we lived in a place that we could carry on with that, or keep that feeling going, keep that connection going. And I think that's what Andrew's saying, like those two things combined changed us hugely, didn't it?
I think it shifted our sense of what was important to us. So I think up until then we'd been maybe sort of like more interested in material things. That was sort of how we valued things a little bit, I suppose, especially coming from a design background. We were just sort of interested in things that look nice, and nice products and things like that. And then that shifted very quickly after that experience, or after those two experiences. So I just think it just shifted our way of thinking about that side of things. We became a lot more just satisfied, I suppose, with just spending time outdoors. And it made us like simplify our lives a little bit. I think that's how it made us feel like we wanted to simplify everything. I think that experience in Sweden, we had so little with us. We hiked for 5 days, and all we had was our rucksacks with barely anything. And I think we felt so sort of free, and that simplicity there was like a weight lifted, I suppose. And then coming back to the woods, I suppose that there we were able to kind of continue to have this sort of simple life. So it's that sort of simplicity and freedom that I suppose we got from it. It's quite hard to explain. But then from there, I suppose we got into like learning a lot about the woods and about interactions between different species, and then how we fit into that whole system as well. And then we started actually working in the woods, so doing a lot of tree work, and actually getting actively involved in managing the land and seeing like what our impact was on the land. And then that sort of just changes your way about how you think about your place in the whole of nature, and then in the whole of the universe, really. So it's a pretty sort of epic journey.
It sounds awesome. It makes me think about it's almost like we have to go on a bit of an unlearning process, because
absolutely,
the way we're brought up in this material world and conditioned to believe what does a picture of success look like. It's the cars, it's the house, it's the holidays, it's the material, it's all those things. And then you can get a taste for it and go, actually, this isn't what I was sold. This doesn't feel right. So it becomes like this unpicking of our way of being and getting back to, like you said, that sounds amazing, being up in Sweden. I've been up to North Sweden myself, to a place called Luleå in the winter. Does it has this reset for you, and you just just that space in nature and stargazing and just being away, you just think, wow, this is what it's all about, really.
It's like it's living at its most basic, isn't it? So I think it's a very raw way of living, I think. Pure, so it puts you in touch with who you are and what you are, I suppose, as a living thing.
And it is quite difficult to live like that when you come back to the real world. Like, you still have to work and pay the bills and things like that. So it's a way, it's finding a balance between keeping that going but also functioning in society. It's not
you can't just give it up completely. No. It's as much as you'd like to, we still have to pay the rent and stuff like that. So I think that's an ongoing challenge for us, is like how you balance that desire for simplicity, but staying part of the system enough that you still have to have a job or at least pay the bills and drive a car. So I'd like to leave all that behind, but it's it's hard to do that.
Unless you've got some sugar daddy somewhere who's just gonna
exactly, which we definitely don't.
No, it's true. And I think it's just like, I'm very much into minimalism and simplifying my life, and have done for quite many years. Sometimes it's a challenge because you sometimes get pulled back in. But it's almost thinking, well, okay, you can still have a job that you enjoy. You can still have something that you're passionate about, contributing in some way, or pay our taxes and etc. But not buying into all the other stuff. Don't need a new car. Don't
exactly. I think that's what we learned, wasn't it? I think we learned that we could get by on a lot less, and be happier actually the less that we had. I think that was nice. That was kind of freeing, quite freeing. And I suppose that's how I got into doing the work that I do now as well. So now I work in the woods and work in conservation and work with trees, and that means that I get to be outside all the time. So my job is something that I like. I get to spend time in nature as part of my work. So I still have got the job, but I've been lucky enough to find a job doing something that I like. So that's been really good.
What about the challenges in terms of making that shift? Obviously, I know how it can be. when we look at stuff online or we look on Instagram and we see the best versions of stuff, don't we? Really, you know, we see the best photos, we see the best stuff, but it's, you know, it's going to be a transition, isn't it? I'm thinking what kind of advice you might give to someone who is looking, and maybe this is advice for me, because I've been on a computer for 20 odd years, and we touched on before we started, been converting a van, do other stuff in the garden and make stuff, and you know, and I always think, whether it's either, are those things going to be just stay hobbies for me, or can they actually be a thing where I can actually shift my work, my life more to not being on a computer all the time? But yeah, kind of what maybe advice you might give people who are thinking to not, you know, shift to doing something more craft based or with the hands or just in nature.
I don't know whether we're the best people to ask for advice. I think we're still figuring it out, you know, and I think you kind of always will be, I suppose. I think that's the first thing to accept, is that maybe it's going to be a bit of a journey, and you might never get to the end of it. I don't know, but we started off like in front of computers as well, and then I think the way that we did it was incorporate the craft side of things into it quite gradually. So we were still designers, but we started making things sort of as a side project, I suppose, and then just kept the two things going together. For a long time we did that,
and it wasn't easy.
No,
like,
it's not easy.
I think some things that are difficult, especially that you found difficult, are balancing, switching your brain between the day job and the job you want to do. So like the outdoor work and the indoor work are very different parts of your brain that you're using, and that's quite hard. And for a long time we had to keep the design going because that was our main source of income. And so the shift, it was gradual. I'd say like it's been at least 6 years of like doing the both alongside each other, and then one eventually has been able to outweigh the other, and you're able to go for it. So it takes time, and but I think, you know, if it's something you like doing, it's about, I think for you, it's that you kind of find people around you that are trying to do the same thing. So you've got people that you can work with, and then you make the connections. It's very much about connections, isn't it?
I think that's nice. Is that would be definitely a good recommendation, is to kind of build a network of people doing similar things, because it can feel quite isolated when you go out and do this stuff on your own. So it's nice to build a little network beforehand. I guess just to think like really hard about whether you want to make the switch. I don't think there's necessarily any harm in having the two going, you know. I think that's quite a sensible thing, actually, because it can be very difficult to make a living from making things or from working in the woods. It's a different lifestyle. I think you have to sort of you have to come to terms perhaps with the fact that you're not going to make very much money, and be okay with that. You know, if you're okay with not earning very much money, then it's quite a good lifestyle to pursue. So I think think very carefully before you do it. I mean, I would always encourage people to kind of to do the things that bring them closer to nature, and but maybe like with a word of caution, that it can be quite difficult to make a living out of it, and also to not lose the joy, I suppose, that you got from it in the first place. I think as soon as you make something your job, it could be hard to hold on to that, you know, those feelings that you got from it when you first started. I found that it's better now, but I have found that a struggle at times, especially with making things. So when I started out in green woodworking, I just loved it because it was something that got me outside. I was working with my hands. I learned a lot about nature from it as well. So just making things in the woods was how I learned most of the stuff that I know now about trees and plants and wildlife. But when we started getting busy with it, it became a bit of a slog. So instead of making things for fun, we'd have like an order of like, I don't know, making 15 or 20 spoons, and I'd be whittling away, and it felt just like any other job, to be honest, you know. And I sort of lost the joy a little bit. So I think that's something that I would recommend that people think about, you know, before taking the plunge into making the thing that they like doing into their work.
Yeah, it reminds me, there's a guy that I follow, I think you've heard him, called Derek Sivers. He's written a few books, and one of his most recent books, he says the people that he knows that seems to be the happiest are the ones that have got a job that they enjoy. It's not the highest passion, but they enjoy, and it pays them pretty well. But then they also dedicate enough time to the passions and the hobbies.
Yeah.
And the passions and hobbies don't have to turn into an income, because you know you've got that other thing there in place. But if one of them does take off, brilliant. But it's like you said, it's very tricky, because something that you do as a passion, and then all of a sudden you're doing it for clients, for orders, it does naturally change
It does. Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah. It does. I mean, I would never want to put anybody off from, like, from following that path, or like pursuing their dreams. And I really do believe that your work should be something that you enjoy, because we have to spend a lot of time working. So if you can find a job that you enjoy, then I think that's what you should do. But it's taken me a long time to figure out that balance. So now I really enjoy the work that I do, my sort of, I guess, like bread and butter work, which is practical conservation work, tree work, woodland work. And then, I think the making things, and that side of things, is sort of more of I've scaled that back now, so that I just make things that I like to make. And we still, we will sell them. We still sell them, and we will teach workshops and things like that. But I think
not trying to make that
the main source of income. Yeah. So I think, like, having a balance is really important. But it can take a long time to figure that out, though. It's taken us a long time, and I think it's something that's ever evolving.
I think it is. It's always evolving. Is it? My mindset at the moment is not. I don't ever want to just do one thing like full time. I want to mix my time up with other stuff and other interests.
Yeah.
Because I think anything full time, unless it's absolutely a dream, it's going to have downsides. So it's just like mixing it up and keeping interested in things. I think naturally being like a creative, which you are, and myself, and you kind of sometimes you can get itchy feet, or you can you get excited about the latest idea and you want to charge after that, but you have to rein it in. Because it's often the issue with creatives is you've got too many ideas. It's like,
well, exactly. Yeah.
What do you dedicate your time to?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, would you say that you just naturally feel more resilient now, and being in nature, in the woods, a bit more of a survival, if the things go to pot type thing in the world, you can, well, it's all right, we can forage for food, we can get fresh water, spring water, or all the sorts of things that people are probably worrying about during COVID, particularly. Like, oh shit.
Yeah, I think there is definitely an element of that. That's not why we do it at all. We're not survivalists.
No.
We're not like building a bunker or anything like that. But like it is. But I think,
it gives you confidence. There's that difference between, I suppose, when we first started out in this, and you don't have that confidence after you've been doing it for a long time. You just feel very comfortable in those situations, so you don't have the fear of being lost, or if something went wrong, you would know how to handle it. So I think with knowledge comes confidence,
and a bit of power, perhaps.
No,
definitely. I think it makes you feel quite resilient, and I suppose also that just connection to nature as well makes you sort of feel a bit more resilient as a person as well, like as an individual. Do you know what I mean?
I think so. I think this is something we've really lost in our society, because even just a couple of generations back, our like grands and they would have known about all the plants in the garden that they could use to make them feel better when they had a cold, and these days we just don't have that anymore. So those are the things that I feel most kind of have given me confidence, and that kind of, not survivalist, but just being able to look to nature for help for things like that.
It's empowering.
It is empowering.
It's really empowering. But it's such a shame that only over a few generations has been lost, because
and it's only a small amount of knowledge, really.
It's so easy,
that it takes to get that empowerment. I remember from when we were teaching workshops, which we don't do now, but we'd like to get going again. But I remember just sort of how life-changing it can be for people just to learn very simple skills, you know, like how to light a fire, you know, properly, or how to just see nature as an ally rather than a threat. I think, you know, something changes in people and suddenly they do feel empowered, and especially with making things as well. I think, you know, just teaching someone to make something simple like a spoon using their own hands and a knife, that's empowering as well, isn't it? It kind of gives you back a little bit of power, you know. I think now we're very sort of reliant on other people to do things for us, or if something breaks, you know, people don't feel like they can fix it themselves. And just having a few practical skills like that, it just teaches you that actually you can try stuff, you know, you can make stuff.
And it gives you the connection
And
back,
it gives you the
which
connection.
is what I think is the thing that people have lost.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it definitely feels like we're going to make a bit of a shift back to, you know, you look at the outside world, we're talking about jobs and stuff. I think it's something like 70 to 80% of people don't like the jobs. And there's a part of that massive about them that actually despise the jobs. And, you know, it feels like we've gone so far away from our natural way of being and living in this digital world. You know, people are sicker or more anxious than they've ever kind of been. If you look at how things, but as you said, the past 2 generations, how obesity's shot up. And, you know, I remember when I grew up in the 80s, so I'd always be out, like always out. You know, the street was full of kids. And now there's no kids there generally. You know, over playing whatever games or whatever, or online. And it's kind of, it's a challenge to try and navigate that now. You've got a young son, I've got a young daughter. You're conscious of the world that they're coming into, and you want to give them the best possible environment, but also understand that they're constantly going to be influenced all the time. But that's probably the challenge ahead of us, for sure. But I think what you're doing and what many other people are doing is, as I say, getting back to our roots and trying to find a way of navigating this world and life, but we don't lose our mind from it. We are kept close to nature. And I think, like you said about with nature, when you're in nature, whatever's going on around the world, once you immerse yourself in nature, it doesn't really matter. You can wash it. It feels like it can wash you away. It's like quite very cleansing of the challenges that can be going on. And obviously you can turn on your news and think that the whole world's falling to pieces, but actually if you go outside and, you know, the birds are still tweeting, the sun's still coming up, the wind's still blowing, the water's still running, and they're the most fundamental things that we need for life. It's a interesting one. Touching on kids then, so how have you found, you would have been in the woods when you would have had your son, how did you find that as a transition for you to becoming parents?
Well, that's quite interesting, really, isn't it? Because I think it was because we lived in the woods that we decided to have kids in the first place. It was sort of not something that I'd ever really wanted to do, but I think it was part of that connection to nature that changed my way of thinking about that, I suppose. And it was a great place to bring up Benji, wasn't it? It was
Benji's middle name is Silas, which means son of the woods. So he is
amazing.
He introduces himself as that.
He's son of the woods. So that was, I mean, it was a magic experience, wasn't it? Really, like being able to bring him up in the woods. And I think we were quite a long way along our journey then, weren't we, as far as nature connection goes and stuff like that. And I think we were really keen to share that with him.
It felt like a very natural thing, and he fitted into that life very easily. And that's not to say that it wasn't challenging and hard, as it obviously is having a child, but that definitely, having that space and having that outdoor access to that on our doorstep like it was so important. I mean, that was where, you know, every day I could just walk out and he would go to sleep in the wood, you know, and the amount of places he slept in, like
different mossy logs that he slept on.
He was just so content.
And
I do think, you know, there were a lot of things that it affected him. You know, like he was very resilient in terms of not picking up bugs. Like he gets over colds really quickly. Those sorts of things that you can, it's anecdotal that's what it is, but I do feel like it just had a big impact on his just everything really. He is definitely son of the woods, and it's funny how now, having left the woods and come and lived up here, and to see him adapt to a new environment but just love it, and just be in this wilder place. And he's it's changed again for him, hasn't it? And now he just he's climbing up boulders and he's so comfortable in the outdoors. And it's just it was, I think it's it's one of, like you're saying about kids now and the access, and it's about access, isn't it? We were very fortunate to be living where we were. It's not the sort of thing that people like, we've always said this, like we lucked into that place. It wasn't the sort of place that we ever could have usually afforded to live. It's like that it just happened that we found it.
We got lucky,
and he had that experience, and we feel incredibly grateful and fortunate that happened. And it makes me sad that it's not available for all kids. Like everybody can't have that start in life. You can't all be doing that because the access isn't there for so many people. So that is something that bothers me a lot.
No, definitely. I think it feels like kind of the right way to bring up kids, but it's not available for a lot of people, so that is definitely sad. But for us it was really good. But like you say, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been a lot of challenges as well with that. But and then actually moving up here has been quite interesting with him, hasn't it? Because I think we always want to make sure that stays a part of him, that he was brought up in nature. And I feel like since we've moved up here, although we're spending a lot of time in nature, it's different. It's a different landscape. So we're not in the woods so much anymore. And it feels like a bit more of a struggle, I suppose, to keep reminding him that that's sort of where he's from, if that makes sense. Because now he's 6 and he's at school, there's a lot of like other influences that are coming into his life, and we don't want him to be too isolated from other people.
It's that balance again.
It's that balance,
as with everything. Like you do have to fit into society, otherwise it's not fair on him. So we have to let some things go because he needs to have both. So it's about, again, it's a whole, as with everything with parenting, it's about evolution all the time, and adapting to new phases and figuring it out. And you never know if you're doing it right, and you just hope that you are doing some things right and it's going to be beneficial. And he's a happy kid, so that's all you can hope for, isn't it?
But when growing up, we were always keen to teach him about the stuff that we knew. So he had like a surprisingly good level of knowledge about like plants and mushrooms and stuff when he was like sort of 4. And so he could tell you what most flowers were. But since we moved up here, he's forgetting some of that stuff, and he's more likely to maybe
tell you about Lego
or I don't know, something, which is fine. But there's definitely like a bit of that's a bit of a struggle, I suppose, for us. I guess more for me, more for us. Like
it's fine. You just have to take a step back sometimes and not try and control everything.
No, that's right. So I just want him to be like this little nature boy, but on the other hand, I also want him to be able to fit into society, because he's going to have to, so that
not be fully feral.
Not be fully feral, no. So it's definitely, there's definitely a bit of tension there, isn't there? Like between those two, I think, especially as he gets older.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? Because there's a guy I follow, he's over in America, he's called Michael Singer, and he basically set up the spiritual community. It's called the Temple of the Universe in Florida. And he'd have like Ram Dass come speaking and all these different people that come over the years. And he couldn't have basically lived more of a spiritual existence. And then he had a daughter, and his daughter's kind of trajectory's just gone. Even though she grew up in that environment, she's gone out into the world, working, married, kids, living in a more conventional way of being. So it's tricky, isn't it? Because I'm the same with my daughter. I'm kind of thinking, how's she going to be? And you want to kind of, influence and guide, but eventually at some point they're their own person, aren't they? And they're going to make their own choices.
This is it. All you can do is be yourself with them and you know, show them the things that you love and that are important to you, and then let them go with it, because they are humans of their own, you know.
I think you've got to give them a good foundation,
yes,
you know, which Benji's had a good foundation in nature, and I hope that'll always be part of who he is. But yeah, if he wants to grow up and get a job in finance or whatever, then
fine.
I guess that's
sort of that when we're older.
Maybe he can buy us a house in the woods when he's.
He can buy you the woodland,
yeah.
Funny how these things will work out.
Yeah.
I think you're definitely getting the things right. I think it's Gabor Mate speaks about how if you get the first 3 years right of a child's life, then you know, then it sounds like you've definitely got the first 3 years right, if not the first 6. So I know a lot of things tend to change between like 3 and 7. They kind of start to develop a bit of a personality.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you can give them the right place for the first 3 years and stuff, you're certainly giving them the right footing for in the future in many ways. But I actually took my daughter to a forest school this morning. It was actually the first time we went. She's just getting to that age now where she can probably start to get stuck in and be making all the mud and rolling around with all the animals a little bit. And in many ways, for some people who might not live in the woods, or about yourself or be so close to nature, there's still that option now where forest schools are becoming much more popular. You can take your kids. Like, it was cold this morning, but it was lovely. There's loads of little kids there. We spent 2 hours outdoors, and it's just a way of because like you say, sometimes she's at home and if she gets home, she gets a bit frustrated, and sometimes she's like, wait, I want to watch Pepper. I'm like, no, you know, you watch, come on, we're going outside.
No, exactly. Absolutely. I think that's really interesting. I think those first 3 preschool, basically, there's a lot of provision like that, and there is, and then when they get into actual school, that's when things feel a little bit different and a little bit more out of your control as parents. So it's about trying to find that balance then, because the way the national curriculum is and the way schools are, it's harder for them to provide that kind of outdoor access, and obviously then it's up to you to be doing that at the weekends and stuff, so it does get more tricky, I think. And so, like you say, once they're sort of 5, 6, 7, that's the age where these things, it feels a little bit harder. So I think we always thought we'd homeschool Benji, but it just never worked out. It's a difficult thing to do with jobs and
both being self-employed.
And again, with like, you need the right community around you, so it's but I if I'm entirely honest, I wouldn't have him in the school system, but it's what we've got. So
it's a real tricky balance, isn't it? Because it becomes basically I had someone on the podcast of permaculture designers, and they homeschooled their daughter, and she used to be a teacher. So how it kind of worked for them is they built up a community of people who were homeschooling, and she would take in about 5 or 6 of the kids, and then their mums and dads would be paying her to do it in that way. So, but obviously she was a teacher, so it kind of transitioned quite well for them. And I think how she would do it some days, on a Monday, she'd spend it with her grandparents and be cooking and spending time outside. But it's a tricky one. And also something that I'm interested in actually is doing it, because you can do it part-time. Your kids don't have to go in full-time, do you?
Flexi school.
I don't know how that would fully, sometimes like my wife was saying, well, what if the kids would want to be in on those days? Or it's a tricky one, isn't it, to do party time. I don't know fully how it would work, but I guess
it is, and you just have to once they get to that point and you've got to make the decision, you just go with it and hope that it's going to work out. And he's in a lovely school here. It's a little village school, so there's only about 50 kids in the entire school, so that I feel is beneficial in lots of ways, because it's much more of a kind of like they all mingle, all the different ages and stuff, which is nice. But it's hard.
It's hard. No getting around it.
No.
And then I guess we just do what we can now to sort of every weekend we just try to be out and about doing stuff, and I think especially with Benji, it's about like keeping it fun as well, and not pushing him too much to do stuff that he doesn't want to do, and just keeping it exciting. So we do lots of small adventures, lots of just like lots of eating our lunches out, and and going for swims in the river and in tarns and stuff like that. So just doing what we can, and then we like to keep the knowledge thing going as well. Just keep keep just sharing stuff with him, I suppose, about what we know, rather than quizzing him on it. Just sort of just keep pointing stuff out and telling him what stuff is, and hope that he takes it in. And but
I've seen some of your adventures. I got your email this morning, and seeing the little adventure you went on last weekend. If anyone's listeners, you got to check out the photography as well. I've got these guys can take some beautiful
thank you
photography.
That's kind of you to say. That's something that we're hoping to do a bit more work of, actually. Get a bit more photography work now we've moved up here. So we sort of just like restructured what we're doing a little bit with Miscellaneous Adventures. So we were doing illustration and design stuff, but we're sort of going to let that go a little bit and focus more on photography, because I think it fits a little bit better in with the rest of the stuff that we're doing. So
and you got the landscape for it.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why we moved up here, going back to Benji as well, was I think we felt like we had not fallen out of love with the woods, because I think they'll always be important to us, but I think we'd lost a bit of the joy and enthusiasm for spending time outside, maybe because we'd just done it for such a long time. So I think like what we want to share with Benji is that like joy that you get from being outside, and that enthusiasm. So like coming up here to a new landscape has got us more excited about spending time outdoors, and then I think it's easier to pass, to share that feeling with your kids if you're genuinely excited about it.
I think it was the wider
landscape, the bigger landscape
that we were in Sussex. We'd kind of, we were bored of it, weren't we? The woods were always our little bubble of home that we loved, but outside of that it was difficult to be sharing like those bigger things with Benji. So this has been great to open up.
And it's also amazing what they can do as well. I think like just watching Benji develop as well, like his skill level and stuff, it's sort of he's really sort of adapted very well to the landscape up here. Like when we first moved up, it was he's got like tired legs and he was a bit sort of unstable on his feet, but not long after that he's like clambering over boulders and jumping over streams and all that sort of stuff. It's terrifying, but
that's the bit of surrender's got to come in, hasn't it? It's like
every time I want to say be careful, I have to put it
it's tricky, isn't it? Because it sometimes only takes one slip, doesn't it? And then but that's how they work it out, don't they? They find
that's right,
grow and learn, but it's not easy, because they're flesh and blood and they're the most precious thing in the world to you. Before I had kids, I thought I would be I think I was more laid back, and then once we've had Stella, you just you realize that they're under your supervision and your guidance and your responsibility for quite a few years, especially when they're very little, and you just think, if anything happens, it's on me. But it's part of the initiation, I think, of going into parenthood, isn't it? Of allowing them to learn and grow, because if not, then we'll just create a bunch of kids that are not willing to take risks and chances in life and grow and have adventures and explore.
And they're very resilient and capable if you give them that space. I mean, well, Benji has been anyway. I never want to speak on behalf of other parents, because I know that everybody has, everyone's experience is totally different. But that's how it's been with us. So
exactly, isn't it? We're all based off our own experiences in life and what's happened to us, and it's going to influence us and stuff. Talking about some adventures, then I noticed you've got a van. Do you manage to get out on that? And does Benji enjoy having little van life adventures?
He loves it. So this is our second van that we've had. This one's I really like this one, but he really likes it. I think like for us the van is really good for like just small adventures. It turns something it turns like what could be quite ordinary into something more of an adventure, doesn't
well
it?
when you have a grey day and doesn't feel like there's anything to do, we can just get in the van, go and get chips somewhere and look at a big landscape and not have to get out. So you've got that little home on wheels that you can take out into the mountains and have that. So it's come into its own up here, hasn't it?
It's
really been it's been great. we only really use it at the weekends as a kind of adventure vehicle when we want to get out and do something fun, but also for camping and stuff. It's great. It's not really a van to sleep in, so we usually have a tent up next to it because it's not quite big enough, so it's kind of like a day van really. And
we have all slept in it. It's a bit tight. We went to Scotland last year for 2 weeks and it rained every day. So we spent a lot of time together in the van, the three of us sleeping top to tail in the back of the van. And I don't think we'll ever do that again.
No, talking about parenting challenges, that was probably our most challenging 2 weeks of parenting. Trip. It was horrific, but but having the van, was a lifesaver in that time. Like it did make things more fun. And so it's great. It's good fun. It is like Andrew touched on just before we started. It is it's a constant upkeep of a van. Is not easy, and I think there are times where you're like, oh, we should just sell it and get something more normal, but I don't think we ever can.
I don't know whether if you've seen the van, it's a 1996 Mitsubishi Delica L300, so it's like 20, I don't know, whether it's 25 years old or something, so it's got a few bumps and
imported from Japan, so it's there's not many of them, so if things go wrong, there aren't many, you can't get parts and stuff, so it's a bit of a...
It's been a fun project.
I touched on it before we started. I think I've been doing my own van up for the past year or so. Got away in it. We had to get a trip in it. I was like adamant we had to go away in September last year before the weather started to turn, because I can't spend all the time. Made a little trip over to North Wales, and our daughter, like you talk about with kids, they're so adaptable to anything. It tends to be us, the adults, that find things challenging. They'll just go along with anything and everything. In many ways, and she absolutely loves it. She calls it the yah. So we're going the yah this weekend and stuff. Real fun. And I think that's probably been, as you touched on before, about that's what's enabled me to be able to work with my hands and on a passion project to do something I've not done before, all with the help of YouTube, basically, and other people. That's the amazing thing now. You can teach yourself as long as you feel like you're pretty comfortable holding a tool, or you've got a good eye for detail. It's amazing what you can do, and you really surprise yourself with what you can do. You can look at yourself in the space of a day and go, wow, did I just make that? Like, where did that, it's almost like, where did that come from? Like,
that's a great feeling, that having made something and being proud of it at the end of the day is I think
and then getting to use it,
I think that's why I make stuff. It's that feeling afterwards. And like you say, sometimes you make something and you can't believe that you actually did it, and things. It's great. It's a good feeling.
I remember doing it sometimes. I get up in the morning the following day and I want to go out and have a look at it, see what it reminded me as a little kid when I used to get toys, and then the following day I wanted to come down and see my toys again because my new toys.
Same thing.
Benji's like that now. If you make something good with Lego, he puts it on his bedside table so that when he wakes up in the morning it's there. And like I can totally relate to that feeling.
Because those things don't go away from us, doing. I think I think what I love about talking about kids and stuff is I feel there's so much to us to learn from our kids than the other way around. Like, I've learned more in just over 2 years being a father than I have in the previous 40 years. And she's always encouraging me to have play and fun and be creative. And sometimes life can become too serious at times. We've forgotten what it means like to have fun and be that childlike wonder. It almost gets beaten out of you somewhat, I think, because what are you going to do when you get older? And you're almost taught to project yourself into the future rather than actually be in the present. And our little one is always in the present moment for however long until she goes a bit older, and then she'll be thinking about stuff. But
exactly. No, I think that's true. I think that's one of the things that we had, or I had definitely when we had Benji, was that I think as adults, we tend to forget that we were once kids as well. We sort of distance ourselves from that, and I think when we had Benji, it just reminded me that I was like that at one point, and I guess still am that same person. So it kind of having kids is sort of really life-changing from that perspective. In it changes how you view yourself. I think it helps keep you young. Well, I don't know, it depends on the day. It makes you feel old as well, but
oh, definitely makes you feel old. I must admit, it's the best thing in the world for me, but it's also been the most challenging thing for me. Like, our little one was she still likes to, last night she came in with us at 4 a.m. and then she was awake till 6:30, which means I was awake till 6:30 with her. So sometimes she'll sleep through, other times she's not. She's in and out, and then but she's so cute that you can't be angry with her at all.
No, that's it. Yeah.
But it's still like sometimes like I'm like, honestly, Stella, I've got a few things to do today. I could really do these. At least getting 7 hours would be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's part of the just the way it is. I think no one really, nothing could really prepare me for being a father. I was 40 when I became a dad, so I was a bit older.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing in the world could have possibly prepared me. I was like, why didn't anyone tell me it was going to be this hard?
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that nobody ever prepared me for was how hard it was going to be emotionally, I suppose. Like, I guess I knew that there'd be like sleepless nights, and I knew I'd be worried and stuff like that about his health and stuff. But I think I wasn't prepared for how much it was going to affect me emotionally. I think like it changed the way that I thought about everything. I suppose in a way it's very similar to the feeling that we had when we sort of like discovered nature. It was like really life-changing. It changed like how I thought about everything. And I had a very similar experience with Benji as well. Like it changed how I thought about myself. It changed how I thought about my parents. I could see my parents in a different way.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't think anybody prepares you for that sort of stuff.
I don't think they should, because nobody would do it.
No, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But sometimes I do think that maybe like, particularly for dads, I feel like there's not enough of we're not very good at talking about it. That sort of emotional side of things. I think it's important that it's okay to talk about that sort of stuff. So like I've never cried as much before. I after since having Benji, I'll cry all the time now. I never used to before. So I think it's nobody prepares you for that side of things. So
It's cracked you wide open.
Yeah, it totally does. Yeah.
It's true that though, about in terms of I think there's a little bit more of a trend happening, but generally men historically would not talk about the feelings, would just bottle it up, get on. You got to be strong, and I think we have to be strong in many ways, but also we've also got to be open and be vulnerable and express ourselves in that way, because when you do, you suddenly take the weight off. When I hear someone express himself and being vulnerable, how challenging it is, you suddenly feel your own self soften, because you realize, they're going through that as well. They find that challenging, because I see loads of dads who'll be walking the kids to school, and I'm looking at them thinking, you look absolutely destroyed. You really look like life is really, beating you down. And you just want to go give them a hug and just say, it's all right. We know how you're feeling. But I think so many people, and it goes back to just the way we live. I think that's probably another challenging. People maybe find it more challenging now to have children than maybe it would have been historically, is because the way we live, and everything's so fast paced, and being out in the world, and you've got all the pressures of bills and all sorts of crazy stuff, that to suddenly then try and integrate parenthood into that as well can suddenly just make things bubble over, because it's like so much to try and do. All of a sudden, I spend about an hour each night tidying the house. Once Stella's gone up, I'm basically, she dismantles the house throughout the day, and then I put it back together at night, and then it starts again over. All of a sudden, the tasks that you've suddenly got, which are endless now compared to what they used to be.
Yeah, definitely more hugs, I think, is the answer.
Yeah. Oh, the best. She gives the best hugs. No, it's the best thing in the world. So moving forward in terms of you, so it sounds like you got a bit of a transition. You're going to be doing new things and stuff like that, because I always really like the idea. Obviously, we were too far away because you were down in Sussex at the time, but those workshops that you do, was it like weekend workshops, and you'd have people, I don't know whether you'd be camping there or doing whatever stuff, and just that connection with nature. Do you have any, you touched on it, but any kind of thoughts, plans maybe in this year 2023 to get some of them? Because the Lake District, what a location that is. You can really attract people there, no problem.
We've only been here for a year, so I guess we're sort of still figuring out the landscape and stuff ourselves. I think when we were in the woods before, we felt very confident in teaching people about the landscape there because we knew it so well. I think we're still figuring out
Yeah,
the landscape up
there,
here and how it, you know, how it looks the way it looks and what species grow here and what you can do with the things that grow here and stuff. So we're still learning all that sort of stuff. And I think, yeah, we're definitely like gone through a bit of a transition, I suppose, as to the kind of skills that we feel like we could teach now.
Yes.
I think so our workshops before, we did a lot of wood carving, and I don't know whether we would do that now. I think
they would be probably more nature connection based,
yeah,
including those kinds of skills, but maybe slightly less focused on wood carving. But yeah, we're still figuring it out. We're talking with other people up here about it, so yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get something going this year, but we'd love to.
But yeah, I think like teaching and just meeting loads of interesting people it's been a really good thing to do, to teach the workshops. So we'd definitely like to get them back up and running again. But I like to make sure that I'm really confident before teaching somebody. So I think we've got to figure all that out first. But yeah, I think we'd like to do I think the workshops that we like to teach now are perhaps like more like guided walks and things like that, perhaps like helping people to see the landscape differently, rather than perhaps learning something practical. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out.
Watch this space.
Yeah, it'll come.
Yeah.
There's no rush, is there really? There's no rush to stuff.
I think, and your skills are changing as well, aren't they? So you're now more into like foraging and ethnobotany and stuff. I think that's something that we'd like to bring into it, which we didn't do before.
Yeah.
So yeah, but definitely we'd like to get back into it. Yeah. So if not this year, then next.
And do you think you'll stay in the lakes?
Certainly for now.
Yeah.
I love it here. It's great.
Yeah.
We're very happy that we made the move. Definitely. Yeah.
It's a few miles away, isn't it? You must have travelled a few hundred miles from Sussex, is it? To get up to the lakes.
Yeah, that is
300, I think.
Yeah, 300 odd miles. So yeah, that is like, I suppose it's one of the negatives, isn't it? So all our family and friends are back down south. So
yeah, that's been the hardest part.
That's been hard.
Also, it's been really lovely to last year to have them come up here and stay and show them this new place and share new things with them. So you know, there are pros and cons always, and that one is the hardest. But we're kind of figuring out that quality time over lots of time. You know.
Yeah. And we also left behind our childcare network. So yeah, that's the negative.
Yeah. What about in terms of community then? Up in the lakes, you touched on it a bit before. Have you been able to build that sense of community and new friends and so forth?
Yeah, we've been lucky. I mean, we had a couple of friends up here already, and it's been really nice to reconnect with them and see them more often. And obviously Benji's in the school here, so there's that gets you into a small community quite quickly. You get to meet people. It is a very small rural community here. It's lots of little farms that are kind of dotted all over the place. It's not like a street or like it's quite fractured, isn't it, a little bit? But you sort of it takes time. You kind of have to. But so I guess in a year we're where we'd hope to be. We've got some friends locally, and like through your work, you met a lot of people.
Yeah, and luckily through woodworking and through the stuff that we do at Misc Adventures, we've been able to sort of meet like-minded people, I suppose. There's a really nice community sort of around the South Lakes of woodworkers and people into woodland stuff. So I've been lucky in that I've been able to meet a lot of people involved in that. So I'm working in conservation now. I'm working in coppicing. And so I've met a lot of people through that. So there's actually a really nice community up here. I think we've been surprised actually, like how not how easy, but how quickly we've been able to sort of meet people.
Yeah, it's been very welcoming. It's always nice. I think. I don't want to say anything much about the north and south, but there is a difference definitely. So it has been very
found it very
much
friendly.
easier than I think we thought it was going to be to make that transition, which is a nice surprise, I guess.
Is it colder traveling 300 miles up, or
it's wetter? But we knew that. I grew up in Manchester, so I was prepared for the wet.
Oh yeah, Manchester, yeah, rains
Yeah,
every day,
yeah. So I was there till I was about 15. So I knew. But it's actually, I say it's been wetter. We were very lucky last year. We had one of those, like, it was a really nice summer, wasn't it? So it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. So
I think the thing is it's colder and wetter up here when it's cold and wet, but when it's sunny, it's like it's absolutely glorious, you know. So that's
or
sort
snowy, you know.
that's
so
the trade-off, I think. Yeah.
So have you found any hidden gems up there that you could share with the
Can't tell you
listeners?
about
Tell you about them. We want them to stay hidden.
I think I said earlier, like this, we didn't know this area at all. It was just that Andrew had his job. We had a weekend to find somewhere to live, and we found this place because we rent, and it was like basically the only property that seemed to be available in the Lake District, and we managed to bag it. I don't know how. It was very lucky, that whole thing, wasn't it?
But I think so. Although it's not a hidden gem, but like this area of the Lake District up here on the west coast it's kind of, that was a surprise for us, wasn't it? So there's loads of stuff around here, that we're into, lots of little places, and it's a bit quieter than some of the other bits of the lake.
It's less touristy because it's harder to get to. It's much further. So it wasn't so bad in the summer because we were kind of fully prepared for this. Like, it's going to be so rammed in the summer, but it was actually not so bad over here, and we've kind of found our little.
But don't tell everybody.
Local bits.
Okay, I'll cut this bit out so you don't get people to move to the west. So you do a bit of so many photos. I'm keen on it myself, doing some wild swimming. I can't. It's for me. It's one of the most invigorating, refreshing things you could possibly do, especially when it's cold. And what a reset to the body. I know Wim Hof's become very popular over the past few years.
That was interesting for us. I don't know whether it's something that we planned on getting into, but when I started my job up here, I had like a apprentice, and she was into swimming, and she persuaded me to go in March when it was properly cold, like it was frosty in the morning, and that was the first time that I'd done it in the cold, and I was surprised. I surprised myself basically that I was able to do it. I was sort of expecting to die then, but actually I didn't, you know. And so I think I was really grateful to her for giving me like the confidence, I suppose, to do it. I don't know whether I would have done it on my own, like, but having that sort of mentor, I suppose, to show me how to guide me through it. And then after that, it was it's quite addictive, I suppose. It's sort of
I think we were a bit cynical about it before.
We were a bit cynical
because, like you say, it was a bit, you know, wild swimming, and you know, kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. But actually, they're onto something.
They're onto something there, But so we're running out of time now, but we've been in every month since we moved, haven't we? But we haven't been in this month yet, so we've got 3 days to get in there.
January is a tough month.
It is a tough month.
It's been cold. It's been wet at times.
It's not been nice. No.
Do you do a wetsuit then when it's like this cold, or would you just
no? I mean, swimming's definitely not really a good description of what we do. Just dip. Get in the dip and then get out. But I think what for us, well, for me especially, I don't know, I think when we lived in the woods, we had like this real strong connection to the land, and I think from moving up here, I think we didn't know where we'd find that, I suppose, but like getting in the water is I think we find a very similar connection there, I suppose, because it's a very raw feeling, you know. You're very exposed, like, you're actually very physically connected to the landscape, you know. You're almost naked, and you can feel the elements, you know. So you get this very strong connection to the landscape, I think. So that was I really like that side of it. I particularly like getting in rivers and stuff because I like the feeling of moving water, I like the kind of energy, I suppose, you know. I really like that.
You're a surfer.
Well, I was, so I like that. And then I think also we found that it could turn something sort of mundane into something a bit more magical, you know. So you could go on like what would be just a short hike, but you take your swimming stuff and you have a little dip.
Mm.
And yeah, became like a lot more transformative, I suppose, than your walk would have been otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it. It's great.
Yeah,
And Benji loves it. Benji loves it, but obviously he can't go in the winter. But
Yeah, Benji loves it. Yeah.
He was getting in until about September, and he has a wetsuit, and so he gets in his wetsuit with his little life jacket on, and he just goes rushing in the little rapidy bits in the river.
Put him in the rapids.
Yeah.
One of us goes up one end and the other down the other. We put him in, and he just floats down the river, and you have to try and catch him at the other end.
Fish him out.
Fish him out. Yeah. So that was really great for us, wasn't it? To find out that we've got a nice river spot nearby and stuff. So yeah, we spend a lot of time there in the summer.
I'm wondering whether there's any. I've been watching this guy, Drew Sims. His name is on YouTube. He basically goes and does like winter camping trips, and he takes his drone. He just, it's so peaceful watching him do it. But he went to a place in Idaho, and the water was freezing. It was like -17, but there was hot springs.
Yeah, wow.
Next to it. And I'm trying to wonder, is there any hot? Maybe you won't tell us because that'd be like a secret place. But is there any hot springs up in the lakes?
No, definitely not.
They're all freezing.
No, it's all just freezing cold. Yeah, but that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any hot. No. They don't have the landscape.
No. But I do quite like the cold though. Actually, there's sort of something invigorating about the cold.
You do have to do it right though.
You have to do it right.
Yeah. I'm at the moment. I haven't done any wild swimming cold at the moment, but I'll do my best to have a 2-minute cold. I finish with a 2-minute cold shower.
Yeah.
Shower, sometimes like, but it's at least that's given me a bit of a refresh, because I think even if you spend about a minute in cold water, it can help to reset your nervous system. And
that's what they say. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested in like the the medical benefits, but for me, it's really just about that connection to the landscape. I suppose it's just about doing something that makes you feel closer to nature, and if there's like a medical benefit, then that's great, but I think more important is just that connection to nature. And
I think generally that helps with your mental health anyway though, doesn't it? Like that's part of it,
Yeah, it's just like an added boost, isn't it, if you're going in the water as well, particularly when I think what I find as well being in the water is almost because it's so cold, you're not thinking about anything else.
Exactly.
You're not going to be thinking about, what I'm having for tea tonight, or worrying about that deadline or anything like that. It's like, it takes over.
Yeah.
Well, you're in the moment, aren't you? You're, like we were saying with kids, being in the present, and you're forced to live in the moment when you're in the cold water. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, you know what? I think that's a good way to kind of wrap up the chat. If people are interested, you've got a podcast as well, but if people are interested in checking out your work, where's the best way people can find out about you? Well,
we've got a website, which is miscellaneousadventures.co.uk. Bruce on Instagram, Misc_adventures. And then, through our website, you could probably find that we're on Substack as well, which is where our podcast is hosted.
Yeah, and we're sending out a weekly newsletter from there. Yeah,
we're trying our best to send out a weekly newsletter. So that's sort of a bit of a challenge that we've set ourselves, really, just to get into the habit of writing a bit more. I think, since we moved up here, we got out of the habit a little bit. So we set ourselves this challenge of writing a weekly newsletter. So you can subscribe to that, and that's where we're posting about our adventures. And that's where we'll also put out information about workshops and what's going on our store and stuff like that. So
excellent. Well, it's been fun and a pleasure to chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise.
To hear about your time in the woods and now up in the lakes, and interesting to see woods then lakes. I wonder where you go after the woods and the lakes.
I don't know. Woods next to a lake would be ideal, really.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you very much. Really enjoyed chatting with you, Andrew and Emma.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, another episode wrapped up. Speaking with Andrew and Emma from Miscellaneous Adventures. I really enjoyed that conversation. It just felt for me very free-flowing and natural. Obviously got a few things that were similar mindset but stuff. I don't live in the woods. I don't live on the lakes. I do long for a life of a little bit more connected to nature, a bit more in tune with our as I said, our way of being, to bit of a reset. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I'll include the show notes to this on this episode on my website. And yeah, I hope you really enjoyed it. And if you did, please share it with a friend. If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, please leave me a review. It will help just to, get the word out a little bit more on these conversations that I'm having. So anyway, until next time, have a good one.